If you're someone struggling with mental health, you may already be familiar with that critical voice inside your head, the one that never seems to stop pointing out your flaws, mistakes, and shortcomings. It's exhausting, overwhelming, and often leaves you feeling powerless. But what if I told you these inner critics are usually trying to help you in their own misguided way? That's the premise of internal family systems, a therapeutic approach that helps people understand their inner world by recognizing the different parts of their psyche, especially the inner critic. Welcome back to Savvy Psychologist. I'm your host, Dr. Monica Johnson. Every week on this show, I'll help you face life's challenges with evidence based approaches, a sympathetic ear, and zero judgment. In IFS, the inner critic is seen not as a monolithic force, but as multiple parts that have developed over time to protect you from emotional harm. These parts may have good intentions, but their methods are often counterproductive and can cause significant mental health challenges. Below, we'll explore 7 common types of inner critics, why they exist, and how understanding them can be a step towards healing. The first voice is the perfectionist. And here's a version of what it can sound like: you're not good enough unless you're perfect. The perfectionistic inner critic is relentless. It sets impossibly high standards and keeps you in a cycle of self blame when those standards aren't met. Whether it's in your work, relationships, or personal life, the perfectionist believes that being perfect will earn you love, validation, and protection from criticism. However, the truth is, it leaves you feeling like nothing is ever enough. This part may have been born out of early experiences where you only felt accepted when you were at your best. Now, let's look at the impact on mental health. Living with a perfectionistic inner critic can lead to chronic anxiety, stress, and even burnout. It can also cause procrastination because if something can't be done perfectly, why bother doing it at all? It's a mental trap that feeds feelings of inadequacy. Inner critic number 2 is the taskmaster. One way that this can sound like is keep pushing or you'll fall behind. The taskmaster is the part that drives you to keep going no matter how tired, stressed, or overwhelmed you feel. It's like having a drill sergeant in your mind constantly reminding you that you don't work hard enough, you'll fail, or you're unworthy. For many, this part develops in response to societal or familiar pressures that equate success with self worth. Now, let's talk about the impact of mental health of the taskmaster. Over time, the taskmaster can lead to workaholism, burnout, or chronic exhaustion. It often leaves little room for self compassion or rest, exacerbating feelings of stress and worthlessness if you're unable to meet its demands. The third is the inner controller. And this is a version of what this voice may sound like. You need to keep everything under control. This critic's main goal is to suppress desires or impulses it deems to be dangerous. It might attack you for wanting to rest, enjoy yourself, or indulge in something pleasurable. The inner controller believes that letting loose or expressing certain desires will lead to criticism or emotional harm. Often, this part emerges from experiences where emotional expression or vulnerabilities were met with punishment and rejection. Now let's look at the impact on mental health. The inner controller can make you feel guilty for enjoying life or taking care of yourself, feeding into cycles of shame and guilt. Over time, it can rob you of joy and make even small indulgences feel like moral failings. Inner critic number 4 is the underminer. Here's how this one might sound: don't even try, you're just gonna fail. The underminer is the voice that holds you back from trying new things or putting yourself out there. It believes that by keeping you small and invisible, you'll be safe from criticism or failure. It may have developed in response to past experiences where taking risks led to emotional pain, like rejection or embarrassment. Now let's talk about the impact on mental health. This critic keeps you stuck, preventing personal growth and perpetuating feelings of low self worth. The underminer's constant voice can lead to missed opportunities and reinforce feelings of helplessness and depression. Inner critic number 5 is the guilt tripper. Here's what that voice might sound like. Remember that thing you did? You'll never make up for it. The guilt tripper is the part that constantly reminds you of past mistakes, big or small. It replays scenarios over and over in your mind, making sure that you feel bad about them. This critic fears that if you forget these mistakes, you might hurt others or be hurt again. Now, let's look at the impact on mental health. The guilt tripper keeps you locked in cycles of regret, shame, and self blame, making it difficult to move forward. It can lead to feelings of worthlessness and contribute to depression and anxiety as you constantly relive the pain of the past. Number 6 is the conformist. What this voice might sound like is fit in or you'll be rejected. The conformist critic pushes you to blend in, follow the crowd, and avoid standing out. It believes that being different will make you a target for rejection, judgment, or ostracization. This part likely developed in response to situations where you felt judged or excluded for being different in some way. So now let's look at the impact on mental health. The conformist can lead to anxiety about being judged or rejected, making you afraid to show your true self. Over time, suppressing your individuality can lead to feelings of isolation and identity struggles, feeding into anxiety and low self esteem. The seventh inner critic is the destroyer. What that voice might sound like is you're worthless. The destroyer is the most severe of the inner critics. It attacks your core sense of self, making you feel flawed and unworthy of love or respect. This part often develops from traumatic or deeply painful experiences where you were made to feel that something was fundamentally wrong with you. Now, let's look at the impact on mental health. The destroyer can lead to deep depression, self hatred, and despair. It can make it difficult to build self esteem and may contribute to harmful behaviors like self sabotage or self harm. These inner critics may sound harsh, but in IFS, they are seen as parts of you that are trying to protect you, albeit in harmful ways. They develop in response to painful or challenging experiences, often in childhood, and believe that by being critical, they are keeping you safe from further harm. By being aware of these parts of yourself, introducing compassion rather than judgment, and engaging in therapy to discover deeper insights about yourself, you can work towards healing and quieting those critics. Which of these critics are causing you the most trouble? Let me know. You can contact me via Instagram at KindMindPsych or via my email at psychologist@quickanddirtytips.com. The Savvy Psychologist is a quick and dirty tips podcast. It's audio engineered by Steve Rickyberg with script editing by Brandon Getches. Our podcast and advertising operations specialist is Martin Christensen. Our digital operations specialist is Holly Hutchings. And our marketing and publicity associate is Avina Tomlin. Follow Savvy Psychologist on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. That's all for this episode of Savvy Psychologist. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next week.